Hey R3, how you doing, man? How you doing? Welcome in, welcome in. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and start this thing. Today, I'm not sure if I'm gonna post on YouTube this one. I was a little in a funk, unprepared to an extent, and yeah, my brain a little foggy, had a lot to do. But just in case, as always, I'm going to start with who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and a little disclaimer. So first, my name is Eric Schneider. I am a studying psychologist. I'm not quite a professional yet, so anything I say, here's the disclaimer, is just opinion based. This is more anecdotal, and just using a lot of the knowledge that I've acquired, experiences, and everything else in that realm. The whole point of this is more of a just discussion on mental health. The goal is going to be, this is just going to have a 2-hour period with a sense of community that people can come to, and talk about what's bothering them, or if they have questions, or if they just want to chit chat. It's about discussion and discourse. It's more of a open forum. You can kind of privately message me, or since this is streaming live on Twitch, it can be, your name's anonymous, so to say. So you can just in chat, vocalize or type what you want to talk about. And once the community has grown, it can either be just a discussion with that individual and myself, or we can leave it open to everybody else to add insight as well. Harsh criticisms and rude comments would not be tolerated, whether it be in YouTube comments or in the live stream. This is just more of a safe space type thing, where we can discuss mental health and all of its aptitude, covering something that's personally upsetting to you, something you're witnessing, just life, depression, anxiety, fears, things like that. So with that, how you doing, R3? How you doing? Welcome in. The past 2 times I've just kind of turned it into until I build a community, more of like a TED Talk, a podcast type situation. So to an extent, I will probably do something similar. I am not as prepared today as I have been the previous 2 episodes. So this one will be more of a wing it, and that's why I am hesitant to confirm that I will post this on YouTube or not. But I might as well. I mean, what's the harm? You must say I really like this project you do. Something we, especially men, I would say, don't talk ugly about this topic. Yeah, I mean it's the whole point is just opening up, talking about stuff, especially in this kind of virtual world, maybe not virtual, but online world. I would hope to create an environment that people can freely express themselves during this period of time, and you have the anonymity, so to say, of it being Twitch, it being YouTube. It's not tied to your real name, not tied to potential conflicts in your real everyday life. And like I said, if there's anybody else out there that has an issue that's real personal to them. Again, I'm not a therapist yet, not a psychologist yet, so this is all just kind of, discussion. It's not protocol, it's not diagnosis, it's nothing like that. It's just a place to talk and kind of, also have like free association, let your thoughts run freely. So yeah, that's, I appreciate you saying that. That's the goal of this. So if you have anything in particular that you would like to discuss, or, maybe not you personally, but, something that you've thought about and you would like to talk about, we can go ahead and do that. If not, I was thinking, since the reason I am unprepared today with a full-on topic was kind of just a lack of motivation. I had a bunch of other stuff going on. I'm back auditioning for things. So I had audition to do yesterday. I have another one I have to memorize and do in like 2 days. I had one 2 days prior. So there was a big part of me that was thinking to myself, I'm not even gonna like maybe I can skip today. And I was really encouraged to follow that motivation or lack of motivation. I really thought to myself like, I'm just gonna skip today. Like, what's the harm in that? And I'll put a pin in that and go back to it. I myself used to be rather introverted, always rather ignorant towards mental issues. Eventually, I searched someone up and felt really good to just speak openly about just anything. Yeah, I mean, I don't, I know you're from European descent, and I believe I keep saying German in my brain, and I don't remember if you keep correcting me or it is German. I don't know much about my last name is Schneider, but I don't know much about the German culture or society anymore as it's progressed. I know it's apparently turned into one of the most, if not the most progressive countries in the world. But I can speak for myself. I grew up in an environment where the only expressions you saw were in a negative standpoint, like anger, aggression, sadness. There wasn't much expressed in the opposite spectrum of like, not to say there was none, and I'm not bashing my parents or anything like that at all. But it wasn't a very not a lot of words of affirmation going around there, and I didn't get to witness much of that. And a military father, you bottle it up, you suck it up, you do what's needed of you, you do your job, sense of duty. Doesn't matter if you don't like it, get it done. That kind of mentality. So it did push away a lot of my, expression and emotional intelligence / communication. I had to kind of explore that on my own. Luckily, I did that at a very early age through acting. That was a major outlet for me to express myself, and whether it was me expressing myself or a character, like it was a way to kind of break out of that. You would say up until the recent years it was pretty much the same. Mental issues didn't exist, and you should wake up and keep functioning like a robot. Yeah. And that's unfortunately like a big societal norm, right? Especially in progressive or individualistic cultures like Western culture, a lot of European culture. with collectivism, collective countries like India, China, Japan's more on the Western side, but it's yeah. There's not a whole lot of group stuff to do, like in terms of mental healing and things like that. If you went to see a therapist, the stigma behind that, say even 15 years ago, and some still today, is like, oh, you see a therapist? What, are you loony? Are you crazy? Are you cuckoo? Or like, what's going on? Like, why do you see a therapist? And that narrative's changing nowadays. It's like, I go to the gym, I work out my physical body. I got stuff to work on mentally too. We're not perfect. But now I think we've become very aware of the situation. For people under 40, I would say older people might still be ignorant about it. Yeah, and that's kind of that gap, right? Millennials to boomers. That boomer and prior generation, which is, I understand it. It's something that they needed to have, right? They had wars going on. They had a war, and then 20 years later, another war, World War. They had the Cold War. They had the Vietnam War. My brain's there. There was like Desert Storm and some other stuff, but a whole bunch of war going on. And I think, now this is just me speaking maybe ignorantly, and I'm speaking from the side of US when it came to 9/11 and the war on terror. I don't believe the majority of the US thought of that as a true war, because it was a war unlike previous wars. Vietnam War in the 70s, it was like you dropped down in Vietnam and you knew the enemy. It was this side versus this side. With the war on terror, it was a lot of guerrilla warfare. It wasn't like us, theoretically. It wasn't like us versus Afghanistan or versus Iraq. It was like, no, we're not against the people. We're trying to find the insurgents. We're trying to find the terrorists. So I don't think we, as a country, went through it in the same way by any means of the boomers and prior generations, where their wars were like hundreds of thousands of people are dying. Basically, I mean, it is a different degree. What's going on currently in like Israel and Russia and Ukraine and stuff like that. Not to get too much on that side of things, but we've been at this like complacency, this place of theoretical self-growth or societal growth, in some regards, progressive growth, that war hasn't hindered. So we are coming to realize, like, we don't need to bottle everything up. Seeing a therapist doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're, it could be you're feeling weak and that's why you need the therapist, and that's 100% okay too. That's, if anything, that's more encouraged. But it's not a sign of like, oh, I'm weak, or oh, I'm crazy, or there's something wrong with me, blah blah blah. It's just, again, it's, you have your three main factors, right? Your mental, your physiological, and your physical. Like, I go to the gym to work on my physique. I try to eat right and have, the proper things I need for my physiological health. So why not do anything for my mental health? Like, why was that the taboo? Like, why was it the taboo? But it's not so much anymore, luckily and thankfully. But yeah, I mean, I am in a weird spot of, like, personality wise, where I think I'm naturally introverted as well, but because of acting and the career paths I've chosen and things like that, I have become extroverted. Um, I'm not afraid to talk to people. I don't get my brain's dead on the term, but we're basically like anxiety disorders or anything like that, where crowds make me anxious and stuff like that. I never really got that, luckily, but I think deep down I'm introverted because COVID, like to me, the test if you were introverted or extroverted was COVID. Lockdown, honestly, I was living life. Like I didn't have to talk to anybody unless I wanted to. I didn't have to feel the pressures. Not that I ever really caved into them too often, but like of friends or coworkers been like, "Hey, go out to get a drink. Hey, let's go do this. Let's go do this." I didn't have to do any of that. I just had to stay home, read, watch some TV, play video games, work out, and eat some food. That was it. And the fact that I was 100% okay with that makes me believe I'm definitely more introverted, inclined in that way than extroverted. But you also think you said, or as I said, you said in the U.S. the military plays a big role toward that. Yeah, I mean, war. Man, I don't want to like misquote, and I don't remember who said it. But man, I'm butchering this, but I don't know enough to really even or remember it enough to even paraphrase it to do it justice. Um, but it's like times of war strengthen and they're like in the cycle of societies, war is not fundamentally necessary, but theoretically necessary for certain advancements and kind of to ground the society, where lack of war or conflict leads to creative growth and um, like ease, lacking or lessening your burden type thing, growth. Like technological advancements are more less geared towards militaristic things, and the resources are more allocated towards convenience of life. I mean, now here in California, you know, it's a crapshoot when you go to a restaurant, or not restaurant, but a fast food restaurant, and you're ordering at a machine now and not at a person, which is a pro and a con, right? Like you're taking away a job, but you're streamlining it, and in theory, that removes the need for that job. Now, it's a catch-22 because it depends on the direction of society. But if you remove all of those type of jobs, it allows the society to put their focus on more productive and progressive things. But you are removing a job that pays someone money. So yeah, but you can relate a lot to your situation. Naturally introverted, but in our society, extroverted people oftentimes their voice gets heard more often. Yeah, the school system is also favoring extroverted people, at least here in Germany. I would say it for America, at least. I mean, the schooling experience I had and the schooling experience that my girlfriend has told me, she's very extroverted, and not any knock on her intelligence, but like I don't mean that. I don't mean to even say that in itself as a knock. She is smart. She went to med school, but her extrovertedness helped her be like close to her teachers and professors. That allowed her more opportunity. And if she didn't do as well on something as someone else because of that relationship she had built, she was allowed certain graces to make up for it. Whereas if you're introverted, you're not going to get those same um, opportunities. Now, where there's a blend, if you're a very, like, in terms of school only. Dude, I have something in my eyeball. I'm talking more school only, but like academics. But if you're actually very, very smart, then being an introvert but very smart, I'd say it not being an extrovert doesn't hinder you. You just have to get it right the first time type thing. But yeah, I mean, in theory, the extrovert, in America, in Western thinking civilizations and individualist civilizations, the extrovert is the one that will typically move further in life, at least in certain fields. And that's because our philosophy is the squeaky wheel gets the oil, gets the grease. So the louder you are, the less afraid you are to talk and be in front of people and voice your concerns, voice your opinions, you're going to get more attention from it. Whereas in collectivist countries or societies like India, China, Korea, stuff like that, the what is it, the sore nail gets hammered in, or whatever, the out protruding nail gets hammered in, basically translating to, if you are the one that's sticking out, society is gonna hammer you back in, because what good is a nail that's sticking out? You need to get hammered in so the whole is strong. It's not about the individual. And you could debate which one is philosophically more better, which one is better for society, because there's plenty of advancements and progression in the world that individualist countries have added, because you have individual aspirations that are viewed as selfish to certain extents, and especially to a collectivist society, it's viewed as selfish. So there are those advancements, but then when you think of, like, when you get in a rut, when you're going through a crisis, a collectivist society, it's a tide rises all boats. Like, if you're feeling down, they will, your family, like, even if you're not family, your family, you are part of the society, and they don't want anybody in the society, theoretically, to be down. So, pick your poison. In some regards, lack of innovation and creativity / inventions, but more cold-heartedness, more selfishness, more me, or more camaraderie, less innovativeness, not none, but less, but more of a sense of community, more of a sense of family, of connection. Pick your poison. But yeah, kind of to, I went on a little tangent there, but mental health, I'm gonna say it a million times over, like, it is just the third thing in our bodies, in our minds, existence, whatever, that you need to work on. whether it's through guidance and help of a professional or just through your own internal motivations, self-reflecting, figuring things out about yourself, doing research on like there's so much research out there. Make sure it's accredited, the source is good. But you can in some regards kind of diagnose yourself, right? Maybe not accurately and professionally, because we've all done the WebMD thing where we're like, oh, I have a cough and my left eyeball itches, and then you look it up on WebMD and it's like, oh yeah, you're dying, you should go to a hospital. And you're like, oh no, and it's like, no, like you're fine. So you got to take it with a grain of salt, but it's, in my opinion, it's the classic Reddit doctors. Yeah, it's weaker to, like, nowadays, and theoretically always, but it's weaker to suppress your emotions and then explode. Or the example with let's say you have a family that the only real interactions you get are either just neutral interactions, day-to-day conversation, or anger, aggression, arguing, that kind of thing. And in that same token, you are raised to bottle things up. You are raised to just deal with stuff. You are raised to not express yourself, not to, that communicating or showing vulnerability is weak, and showing emotions is weak. It's a hypocritical thing, contradicting thing, because getting that angry, getting that upset, becoming a vile person at times is showing emotion. And it's emotion that you are not able to fully control because you never learned how to control it, because you bottled everything up. You can only bottle things up so much until it overflows. That is just a fact of truth when you pour water in a bottle. And just from experiences, once you've gone through this world long enough, there's almost nobody that I know that has that personality type that bottles things up that hasn't had some sort of explosion at some point, if not multiple times. It makes you erratic, it makes you irrational. You don't think clearly, and you don't know how to control yourself and control your emotions. You will give in to all the impulsive lashings and everything else. So I would argue it's not strong to bottle your emotions. It's strong to be able to refrain from acting inappropriately or from letting your emotions control you. I'd say that is strong. But not acknowledging them and not articulately voicing your emotions, that's weak. To me, my argument would be that's more of weakness. And again, I'm not saying if someone upsets you instantly, you should just break down, bawl, like, you upset me. No, that's why I added be in control. Be able to articulate effectively your emotions. And if you don't know in that moment how to do that, take note of it and just be honest. If I'm in a situation personally where I'm feeling frustrated and my frustration is not allowing me to think clearly, I will say, I can't give you a good answer right now, or I'm not in a good state of mind to think clearly. Give me some time, let me calm down, and I'll be able to have a logical, rational conversation. But right now, where I'm getting to emotionally, there's nothing good or productive that's going to come out of this. And you have to be able to acknowledge that in yourself, and you have to not be afraid to express that. That is expressing your emotions. Even if I'm bottling up my reaction because my actual reaction wants to be like screaming, yelling, just getting irrational, getting irate, I'm able to acknowledge it, control it, contain it, and say, hey, this is what's going on right now. And, you know, you got to take that for what it is. If you're around someone who's like, no, we're talking about this now, then it's like, no. Like, you in some ways have to check out. You have to be like, I'm going to go. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. Once we've both calmed down, or at least once I'm at a better place, I'm willing to have this conversation. But right now, I'm not going to be a participant in this conversation. You can vent and yell all you want. And you just kind of got to, check out of the conversation. Your experience, a lot of people can't take a step back to think for a few seconds about their actions, but be impulsive even when calling them out for it. How can they self-reflect? You can't give anybody new information. You can't give anybody advice. You can't, and these aren't 100% rules, but you can't speak rationally when someone is emotional or irrational in that time. I would recommend you would have to, again, remove yourself from the conversation respectfully. Be like, hey, look, and telling someone how they feel is almost always a bad idea. So, when you word things, try not to be like, you're clearly upset or you're this. Be like, you make it about yourself and about the situation. And you could be like, look, right now, I don't think this situation is letting on to a productive conversation or a amicable conversation, a good like whatever, pronoun you want to use, whatever voice, whatever adjective you want to use. It's like, we can continue this conversation a little bit later. And most of the time, unless they're completely narcissistic, most of the time when someone has acted irrationally, once they've calmed down, they've calmed themselves, they will acknowledge that they acted irrationally. Now, they don't always have the emotional intelligence to break it down, to understand it, to be like, why was I that upset? Why was this? Blah, blah, blah. But most of the time, a person knows when they're in the wrong, but not in that moment. And even if they acknowledge that they're wrong in that moment, the feeling of embarrassment of, I've just argued this point and oh shoot, I'm starting to realize I'm wrong in this. Most people don't concede. They double down. Even if they know they're wrong. So the more you combat them, the more you try to tell them something, the more you try to call them out for being impulsive, for being this, for being that, the further their defense is going to be built. Even if they know they're wrong. So, yeah, I think I might actually have to move the time frame of Therapeutic Thursday. It'll have to either end before like 1:30 or start at like 2 to 4 Pacific time or something. But yeah, it's the biggest thing that I've learned in regards to like helping other people reflect and stuff like that is basically you can't force anyone to do anything. It's hard, and I'm not a big fan necessarily of full just you're out of my life. Um, I don't think you learn anything from that, but I am a big proponent of you have to lessen your contact with people who don't make you better. And that, this might give me flack and stuff like that, but that includes blood. That includes family. If your family situation is toxic and it is not allowing you to grow or be a better person or whoever you want to be. Hey, little Peter, how you doing? How you doing? If it's not allowing you to be the person you want to be, again, I'm not saying cut ties, lessen your exposure, because your exposure to things bleeds into you. Even if you are the most optimistic, cheery person in the world, if you are constantly around negativity and pessimism and all this crap, you're going to waver a little bit. And even if you don't waver, you're not going to shine, and you're not going to be able to further progress, because now you're just trying to stay afloat with your positivity with all of this sludge and grime trying to pull you down. Now, again, I'm not advising anybody, technically at all, but advising anybody to cut ties completely with toxic people. Unless, I guess I'm more so saying that if it is family or close friend or someone you grew up with, stuff like that. If it's, someone you just became friends with and then they're being toxic as shit, okay, well, next. But don't, if you're going to have that strength and understanding to know how to cut people off and cut ties, you can choose what you want to do with that, in the sense of, if the other person has a true, genuine curiosity as to why you no longer hang out with them, and you feel you are at a emotional and intellectual standpoint, rational standpoint, where you can have that conversation without it being demeaning, without it being an attack, then you can have that conversation with someone and help them grow to where you might be able to become friends. Like, I've straight up just not hung out with people after many invites, coworkers and stuff, and not given a reason why. And other people, when they've asked me, I've told them. I preface it. I'm like, all right, well, that kind of stuff isn't something that I am personally interested in. I kind of lost my train of thought with that specific example, but again, you can talk to the other person and be like, look, I like you as a person, but I don't think your habits contribute to me becoming the person I want to be. And, again, it's a tough conversation and it would probably piss them off, and you might say the wrong thing. Hell, even I will say the wrong thing, of course, here and there. But, you can try to have that conversation with someone if you, feel the energy is necessary for it. But when it comes to, closer relationships, I say distance yourself, but don't cut ties. Leave the thread of opportunity there, so there's something to grow from both of you. Because maybe it's both altruistic and selfish, right? Maybe not altruistic, but me having a conversation with someone as to why I would prefer to not be around them in their current state of affairs, gives me the experience of having that conversation. So now that I've had that experience, I can learn from it for myself and be like, oh, I messed up in this conversation here. I shouldn't have said this here. I'm not going to know that unless I've put myself in those conversations. And I'd rather do it with people who aren't, as close than screw up a major conversation with someone who is close. So in some ways, they're a guinea pig. I'm not saying that's good. And it's not a parasitic relationship, right? They're my guinea pig and I'm giving them nothing in return. Ideally, it's not an advising thing that you should give this person, because advising them could turn into a relationship where they think you think you're better than them. Like, who the fuck are you to tell me how to live my life? So you don't say, if you were more this, if you were more that. You just express who you are. And in a perfect world, I want to be around people who take care of their physical health, who take care of their mental health, who, when we sit around and have conversation, it's banter, it's fun, but we also aren't afraid to talk business, to talk like about life and about what we want and things like that. I personally don't associate with drinking my sorrows. I personally don't associate with, I had a long day at work, it was stressful, I made, we'll just say $100, and now I'm going to go spend 40 of it because I'm pissed off or because I'm upset. For me, I'm like, that's not productive. If anything, now I just cut into all the money that I worked hard for, got stressed out about, just to drink, which doesn't do anything for me. I'm going to wake up and be hungover and be pissed off. Doesn't do anything. There's something that you had to face with meeting people in China. As we Germans usually are very direct, they will get flabbergasted when we tell them stuff to their face that they would never tell you. But that is rather cultural. Yeah, and that's an interesting point that you're saying, because I've heard, maybe not China, although I have heard it in certain parts of China, but a lot of Asian cultures are very direct, but in a different way. They're more of like an observationally direct. And I'm saying observationally just because the examples I have are physical. And, a couple of Japanese people I've talked to and just seen like clips and things of is, if you're fat, they don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but they'll be like, oh yeah, you're fat. Like, there's no, I mean, maybe not no, but there's not necessarily like a negative connotation attached to it. Whatever negative connotation is what you put on the word itself, but they're just observationally direct or blunt. It was like, oh yeah, you're not athletic. Oh yeah, you're fat. Oh, you're black. Oh, you're white. Like that's just that. Like I said, there was the story when I was in India. My girlfriend, she's Jewish, but she's Polish Jewish, and a group of Indians came up and they were like, hey, can we get a selfie? And we took pictures with them, and then they looked at her and they were like, Jerusalem. And she was like, oh, no. He was like, yes, Jerusalem. She was like, no, I mean, I'm Jewish, but I'm like Polish Jewish. And they're like, no. I have Jerusalem, friend. You're Jerusalem. And it's like, they don't mean anything by it, but clearly, if someone in America said that, oh, it would be a hoopla. It would be some ordeal. But it doesn't mean, like, it's just like, I don't know. You have to understand there's other cultures and other ways of talking to people. And just because something's offensive to you doesn't mean they meant it in an offensive way. I don't want to get too into some things of that, because that's a whole other conversation of like pronouns and stuff like this. But like, something that I'm not meaning as offensive, it's just naivety or ignorance. Um, you know, if I take everything as offensive to me, or I take everything as a personal attack to me, I'm not going to live a happy life. My life is going to be just correcting people the rest of my life. That it doesn't that sounds exhausting to me, to be honest. Like, when people say things that, if I took their word as their intention from my perspective, I would be offended. But who cares? I'm like, you have no relevance to my life. And again, I don't think that genuinely the people say things to be offensive, unless that's the personality type. And you know those people who say anything they can to be offensive. And you know those personality types. If you like that kind of person, or you want that, like, that's the one friend that you have that's offensive, and you keep them around because that's your offensive friend, you know how to talk to them. You know to be offensive back to them, or to just laugh it off, or whatever the case may be. But that's like their MO. It's just to be offensive. Especially when traveling to a foreign country, don't be ignorant, rather be interested. Exactly. Like, curiosity and true genuine interest is great, but if you are the one traveling to another country, you have to figure out and understand their ways of communicating. And it's not just like, oh, if they speak Japanese, learn Japanese. I just mean, like, understand how they communicate. Communicate yourself. You know, if I don't know, there's a whole spiral of conversation with that. But yeah, I mean, if you don't like the culture, then don't try to make them conform to your ideologies. You're the visitor. Like, if you don't like the societal culture, then go to the countryside. Go visit the sites you want to see. Don't talk to anybody. And that's cool too, you know? If I just want to see the Taj Mahal, if I just want to go to Nagpur, if I just want to go to Jaipur, Agra, I just want to see the fort, then I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to try to learn about the culture. I'm just going to go sightseeing. And that's okay. But if I want to learn about the culture, I have to be open-minded. I have to be conscientious about, like, you know, they're not trying to offend me. So if they say something offensive, I can either A, brush it off, or B, get to the bottom of what they mean. Because if I assume what they mean, I'm making an ass out of you and me. It's like, come on. And how you doing, Burnaby, by the way? I saw you comment as well. Hey. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in a perfect world, it's not perfect, but in a my ideal better world is everyone, regardless of financial status, like, I guess the government or whoever, whatever the case may be, you get to travel. You get to pick a location that through your developmental years you get to go to, learn the language. Like, basically you study abroad for like 2 years. Thursday segments. You know, you travel to a culture that is unlike your own, you know, and you study abroad for 6 months. You learn the language. Again, it's easier in your, like, developmental years, but you learn the language a little bit. You understand how that culture, you know, works, and then you come back. Because I have traveled a decent amount, nothing too crazy, but I've been around Europe a little bit, France, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, and then I've been to India. southeastern India in Nagpur, and the northwestern, more popular of New Delhi, Agra, Jaipur. I've seen these cultures. I've spent weeks there. A lot of our complaints here are because of this complacency that we had talked about earlier. You know, when you don't have a war or something to kind of focus on, you're able to focus inward to certain extents, or creatively. And we idolize a perfect society here in the US, and since it doesn't match our idealization of what we think a perfect society is, we ridicule it, and we find small examples and separate examples from everywhere else around the world to say, well, Denmark does healthcare better. Okay, well, overall, their society, while I would say Denmark, I think Denmark, another one, I think it's Denmark, is viewed as one of the happiest societies in Switzerland and stuff like that. But again, there's a lot of pros and cons to this kind of stuff. You know, if I look at it just in the United States, if I'm like, oh, hey, Virginia does the school system thing pretty well, but their healthcare, I'm not actually, like, I don't know Virginia's system, but it's like, okay, cool, their school system is great, but their healthcare sucks. Their roads are shite. Their crime rate is through the roof. Good thing they got the school system, though. But if I'm nitpicking the good thing from this state, the good thing from this state, and the good thing from this state, and then saying, well, why can't we have all of that together? Like, they do it in different regards. It's like, yeah, but they're not doing all of those things successfully. That's a great goal to have, but you can't nitpick. You can't be like, well, that country does this better. This country does that better. This country does this better. Okay, well, in its total entirety, I'm not saying we're the best anymore. Maybe we are, whatever. That's all opinion based. But as a collective, here in the States, I would say we're still in a better spot than most countries in their entirety. Most, not all. But when traveling to rather poor countries, you learn to cherish your privileges. Yeah. India, especially when I was in like Nagpur, it's, from an American standpoint, it's dirty. It's very crowded, very populated. A lot of the houses are like just shacks with just open doors. Like, that was another thing. It was just like a square cement block that they made into a home and or a shop front, a storefront, or it's a little bungalow with, from what I saw, no real door. And it was a huge, maybe not huge, pretty big city. Jaipur is a huge ass city. Holy crap, Jaipur is huge. I was surprised by its vastness, to be honest. And then when I was in New Delhi, I was in a Connaught Place, which really just seemed like another normal place. All the buildings were renovated. It was nice. There were restaurants that actually had like their own storefront and logo and design and interior. But going to the other places, I was like, oh, yeah, you got to be grateful for what you got, especially when it comes to other issues that, while we do have, they're not nearly as bad as people say in comparison to the rest of the world. So again, understand where you're coming from, and understand that other people typically aren't intentionally out to get you. They aren't typically out to degrade you, to offend you. And it's stronger, mentally stronger, to either get to the bottom, like actually have an adult conversation with them and get to the bottom of what they're meaning without being degrading. That's the hardest part. Is, you know, I've run into situations in relationships where people, they communicate how they feel, but it's volatile and it's non-productive and it's accusatory. And then they claim, I'm great at communicating my emotions. You know. Like, to actually be able to articulate your emotions, it's an inward thing. It's not accusatory. It's not, you can use kind of the words like, you made me feel this, but it's better expressed when you say, hey, from my side of things, you did this or you said this, and here's how I interpreted it and how it made me feel. And you can either leave it up to discussion, like, is that how you meant it, or just leave it at that. Just, you said some things, this is how I interpreted it, and this is how it made me feel. Because now I'm not giving the other person the power of saying, you made me feel this way. It's like, no, my interpretation of the situation, mine, made me feel this way, and I want to make sure that my interpretation is correct or incorrect. So being able to articulate in that way leads to a much more productive conversation, where at least you know you're in control. And I mean, there's a lot more talking points just on like having those conversations with people just in general, that we can actually like go into in like a segment or anything like that, where I actually have all my research. But there's a lot of strategies and tips of like conversating with people and bringing about, you know, confrontation, but in a productive way. And, you know, a general rule with having a discussion with someone is you always lose as soon as you yell. You might, because you're yelling or whatever, you might win the argument in theory because it shuts them up, or you're just going to make the other person yell to match you. But as soon as someone yells or starts making attacks at the other person, they have nothing more of value to say. And typically that means they're in a emotional or mental state where you're not going to be able to reason, you're not going to be able to talk to them, even if, like we said earlier, you're able to articulate in such a way that they realize they're wrong. Most people will feel too much embarrassment to acknowledge that in that moment when they're riled up, so they end up doubling down. So as soon as an argument or discussion gets to that point, you just need to take a break from it. However that conversation, however you express that, it's, you know, you've lost any hope for productivity once name calling, cussing to an extent. Like if I'm just sitting here and I'm like, that was shitty, you know, that's not what I mean. But name calling, abrasive cussing, or yelling, once those get involved, typically someone's emotionality is messed up in that moment. They're not in control, and they're just letting their their neofrontal cortex isn't working as much, so they're not thinking about what they're saying. They're just saying stuff now, and they're not internalizing what you're saying. So again, trying to articulate in that moment or get someone to realize how they're acting or anything like that becomes increasingly difficult. So you just got to give someone time. You just got to be like, look, I can tell we're getting heated in this moment. We need to take a break from this conversation, and we can have it again in 5 minutes. We can have it again tomorrow. We can have it again whenever we're both comfortable to have this conversation. But right now, it's just going to hurt the relationship, or it's not going to be good. It's not productive. It's not healthy. Yeah, now that I talked around in that circle, does anybody have anything else that they would like to discuss, talk about, anything along those lines, or something that they want to add to what we've talked about already? I was gonna maybe talk about motivation. You have one more off-topic question? Yeah, no worries. I think next week I'm going to actually, make an itinerary type thing for talking about motivation, how to kind of keep your motivation and get it. We've brushed on that topic in other days, but I'm gonna want to specifically talk about motivation, because I personally was experiencing a severe lack of motivation to even come on today. But I challenged myself, so I was like, I'm gonna do it, regardless. Are people with a weak financial situation able to access mental help in the U.S., or is that dependent on the state? I think in some ways it's dependent on the state. Some are more laxed in certain regards on your qualifications or on your requirements to get mental health for cheap. But a lot of it is financial. But a lot of it is also what you're willing to do to get it. There are, to my knowledge, I could be inaccurate in the ease of this, but there are programs, if you are broke like myself at the moment, you get on affordable health care, and if you can, again, it's a hard one to answer because there's so many layers. To actually get mental health and get it covered by insurance means you don't need the finances, but what it does mean is you have to get diagnosed. You have to have a diagnosis from a professional, which means you need a consultation. You'll probably have to pay the consultation out of pocket and then get the diagnosis. And only if you have a diagnosis will insurance cover any sort of therapy. And that's one of the discussions amongst the field of psychology, psychiatry, and insurances is it forces the assessors to give diagnoses even if they don't think that that's the true diagnosis. If I have someone theoretical in my office when I'm a therapist, I wouldn't be, you're always an assessor in certain regards, but I'm not the assessor to diagnose necessarily. But if I have someone coming in, there's a lot of comorbidity, there's a lot of duality with mental issues, and they might not be one thing or the other, but a combination of the two, but not severe in either category. But now, in order for them to get insurance, or for them to get the medication that I would prescribe as a psychiatrist that they would need, I have to give them a diagnosis, and that labels them as you're a schizo. That labels them as you have generalized anxiety disorder, you have chronic depression, you have this. So people might lie to get diagnosed. You definitely could, yeah. I don't know the layers of what administratively the therapist has to, like, once you get the diagnosis, I don't know what the parameters are yet, because I haven't done it yet, and I haven't experienced it. I haven't interned yet with it. Of what a therapist has in their notes and what they're allowed to express to the insurance company to say that they need continued help. So my concern with if someone lies, it could not even be a concern because I don't know the insurance policies, is that if you lie about it and you're like, I'm seeing people, or I want to, every day I wake up and I want to something, suicidal ideation, stuff like that. Okay, well, you need to seek help. Now it's covered by insurance. But you were lying about that, so now when you go in, you're like, I don't want to talk about that. I'm fine. I really just, I just need a couch. I need to talk. I need to vent. My mental health isn't where it should be. I know that it's not as bad as I made it out to be. I don't know if the therapists, what they are legally required to report, and if they report for the insurance to keep covering it. I don't know that. So you could lie, sure, and then you get diagnosed from an assessor, from a psychologist or psychiatrist. But uno momento. I think it's far enough away. It's still gonna be a little loud, but it's not like a car. It's a air blower. They're doing the yard work. Picked a great time and day to do Therapeutic Thursday. Like I said, I'm probably gonna have to move the time either earlier or later in the day. But we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And again, I just remember I do post these on YouTube now. So if you missed a Thursday and you want to go to sleep to it, or whatever the case may be, if you're not already viewing this on YouTube, for those who are, right here. Schneider JS. Playlists. Therapeutic Thursday. I will probably throw this in there. I debated whether or not I was going to in the beginning of the video and the beginning of the day, but I'm gonna throw it in there. So if you ever missed one, you can go back and watch them. I have them labeled about what we discussed to a degree. Today, this video, I don't know exactly what I'm going to label this one as. It's not going to have the same descriptors because it's been all over the place, which ideally is what I would like. You know, we talk about a whole bunch of different things and come out better because of it, or more at ease. But I think one constant free service is 998 crisis lines in US, and that's just 30 minutes phone call max. Think if someone is suffering with addictions, most places will offer free services as well as part of rehab program. Gotcha. Yeah, when it comes to, again, to go back to answering your question about finance and accessibility to mental health has become a lot more accessible. Oh, I didn't. I'm a dum-dum. I showed this YouTube like I'm not just a picture of me. I threw this up here. I was like, yeah, go to my playlist. You see this? This is my YouTube. And I had it up on the screen. Forgetting that it's just a big old picture of me. So you couldn't even see it. But yeah, so that's the YouTube right here. This would be day 4. So you just go to playlists, Therapeutic Thursday. Oh, Jesus. Oh, no. Therapeutic Thursday playlist. And there you go. Now back to me. Anyways, so to answer the financial thing, it is a lot more available now that it's become more of a norm. Insurance is, especially in America, a hell of a thing. So, you know, good luck navigating that. But yeah, I think the question is just, it's answered in layers. If you have the finances, of course, it's, you know, you don't need the diagnosis, you just pay out of pocket, you go see a therapist, whatever the case may be. You know, whatever the case may be. But if you have lack of finances, your opportunities are limited, but they're not none. But it does require you to do a lot more work to reach out to government or municipal or, you know, your state, whatever government, to figure out what programs they have for it. Now, as Conscious Creates, aka Burnaby, said, you know, a lot of states do have, if you have like severe addictions and things like that, there are programs and rehab type stuff available. Hopefully you don't, you know, get to that point or that level. You're able to seek the guidance and help before you get to that point. But it does become more difficult, for sure, when you don't have the finances, just like with anything in life. But now I'm curious, what about Germany, R3? What is how accessible is mental health care, specifically mental health care, not just health care, in Germany? Like, do finances play a big factor? Is it... like, how is it looked at in Germany? Just out of my curiosity. Because it is interesting, you know, like what societies value it and how they value it, as well as how accessible they make it. Because here in the States, you would say it's accessible for everyone, but money makes you get it faster. Okay. Yeah, for us, the speed, because of capitalism, the speed typically isn't an issue if you have the means, whether that be your own financial means or the government assistance means. You typically don't have to wait that long once you get approval. You might have to wait for a slot for months when applying with the Social Security. Gotcha. Yeah, to my understanding, again, it's a fairly naive, ignorant understanding because I'm not in insurances and that kind of stuff. I guess yet I'll have to learn it if I open up my own practice, but or hire someone who knows it. But to my understanding, once you get approval, it's just about finding the doctor or the psychiatrist or the therapist. And it's pretty quick, the turnaround. And I'm not sure if BetterHelp is a place that insurance acknowledges, but we do have more streamlined things now, like BetterHelp.com, that it's reasonably affordable. I think, I mean, I could be off base because I haven't done a whole lot of research as a patient, but I think they, you kind of pick a price range and then you have a list of therapists within that price range. So if you are paying out of pocket, you're like, gosh, once a week, $80, or once a month, $80. I think 80 is like the lower end of it. And then you go on BetterHelp, and there's a whole list because it's online. You don't have to physically go anywhere. It's basically Zoom therapy. But I'm not sure about the insurance on that, if that service is insured or covered by insurance, rather. But yeah, I mean, the field of psychology in America is growing a lot, and the demand for it is growing in certain regards. It's weird because in some markets it's oversaturating, and in some markets it's still a big need. So we'll see how that turns out in America, in the U.S. But yeah, I mean, it's nice that it's at least accessible to everybody in Germany. Again, in some regards, in theory, it's accessible to everybody here. It's just, different loopholes you have to go through to access it. But at the very least, whether it's, or with lack of it being a professional like therapy session, I think there's so many communities now that you can find a good fit that can at least help you alleviate some of your burden or understand some of your internal issues. Ideally that's something I would like this to grow into, get enough of a following with this. I know it's going to be damn near impossible, mostly because I don't advertise. I'm not that kind of person. But it's gonna be damn it, knock joke time. Don't worry, Nub. In about 30 minutes it'll be joke time. But I know I don't have that following, and if it's going to be damn near impossible for me to get it, but in that anomaly chance that I'm able to, ideally that's what this space would be. If you like, free place to just come, kind of decompress a little bit, have conversation, have discourse, and then go on about your day. But there are many more successful communities than what I'm trying to build and where I'm at right now, that I would think are good outlets to at least learn a little bit about yourself, to learn certain protocols, actionable things, to get stronger mentally. More no black series, no. Changing tags, more appropriate ones would help. Oh, yeah, like my Twitch tags, I probably still have. Yeah, Twitch, ADC, ranked, Master Heat Jungle. For those who don't know, I play League of Legends a lot right now. But yeah, on my YouTube channel I do the hashtags, but it's I don't make the shorts, I don't edit the videos, I don't put a catchy thumbnail. So I'm lacking in those departments for sure. But overall, I'm doing this, like I said, goal number 1 is to build a community and help people. Goal number 2 for me is I learn, which I think it's not a profound thing. I learn by doing. And having this conversation back and forth allows me to know areas that I don't know. So when we have these conversations, I'm like, I'm going to come across this potential question or problem or whatever in my professional field. And this helps me become better and be able to advise someone else or help someone else in a more efficient way. So if I never get a following, yeah, it'd be unfortunate. And yeah, that's a hope. It's not an expectation. My thought process on doing this is high hopes, no expectations. Because I feel like if I had expectations on this, give this 2 or 3 more weeks and I would probably stop. Because I would look at my YouTube and I'd be like, I got 6 views. I've got 6 views, 4 views, 3 views on each video. I've been doing this for 2 months now. My viewer count is anywhere from, last week up until the end, I was just doing a TED Talk. I had nobody came in to comment except later in the day or towards the end. I think Plinko, I was the only one that came in and talked for a little bit. So I spent an hour just talking to myself like a podcast. So if I set myself up with that expectation of like, I'm doing it and I need to see this growth, and I need to see this, and I need to see that, it would set me up for failure. So I'm not doing it for viewer counts. The hope is, I'd be able to reach as many people as I can, and that's great. But goal number 2 is just me getting better. But this therapy session is a way of getting social help to prevent him from playing League of Legends. Yeah, right. If this kicked off, I wouldn't need to play video games anymore. So surprised how good clickbait is. Clickbait is a very strong thing, but if your content doesn't match it, you'll get the click and you'll build a following, and it can be effective, but people will quickly be like, oh, it's just clickbait. But it's good experience. My only vid has like 3K viewers. Oh, 3K viewers because of clickbait. Yeah, I was nervous because last week I used some protocols and conversation from Andrew Huberman and Mel Robbins. So, since, like, full disclosure, since I'm not clever enough, I'm probably clever enough, I'm not motivated enough. Where is it at? On the title of this YouTube video right here, I was kind of nervous just because all of this right here is Chat GPT. I'm like, create a description for me with these parameters. We talked about this and blah, 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 blah. And ChatGPT made this. And then I said, now give me a title. So ChatGPT gave me this. And I was very nervous because it's like, damn, how I pronounce everything. That's why you love me. But just me putting Andrew Huberman and Mel Robbins in the title made me feel a certain way. I was like, damn, I don't want to be clickbaity. I don't want to use someone else's fame and ride that coattail. And I'm nowhere even near the ability to do that regardless, but I was nervous. I was like, damn, dude, am I name dropping? Like, this is, I feel shady. But in truth, that's what I used insights from them. I talked about it. I gave them credit. I was like, Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. It's this and this and this on a very base level. If you want to know more, she has a book. She has this. Andrew Huberman, he has his podcast. He talks about a whole bunch. Like, I gave them credit. I never said like this is mine or anything like that. So I somewhat felt it appropriate to be able to use or to put their names in the title. But yeah, there was a part of me that was like, am I like not name dropping in the sense of like, oh, I hung out with Denzel the other day. Oh, Washington. But, using someone else's name to gain my own fame, theoretical fame. But yeah, I just, I don't have a, like, that's, in some ways, that's why I'm an actor, right? I'm creative, I'll perform, I'll do all of that other stuff, but don't ask me to edit the movie. Don't ask me to advertise the movie outside of if you tell me to be at a place, I'll be at the place and I'll be like, hey, go watch this movie. But I'm not creating ads. I'm not creating the script. I'm not creating. I'm just performing and stealing shit. To put in a very harsh, terrible way. And, of course, there's steps, there's levels. If I was able to make any money on YouTube stream revenue or YouTube video revenue or Twitch specific for this channel, the first bits of that money would go straight into paying someone else to create that stuff. But that's not where I'm at. And that's not my inclination to do. But back to the actual psychology of things, or talks. We got about like 20 more minutes. Does anybody else have any conversation, anything they're curious about, thing they just want to discuss? And let's keep it for now mental health related, not political and stuff like that. Again, I wouldn't be opposed to, like, on a Sunday also creating a free talk place of political views and this and that, and actually having like discussions, true discussions about the world and life and politics and what's going on and who it's affecting and stuff like that. But that's not what this segment is for. This one is for maybe the effects of all of that stuff, how it's affecting you as a person. But yeah, I think next week I'll actually create an itinerary around motivation, and I will keep it open for just conversation like this, but I'll have it more structured. So those of you who didn't see last week's, all right, Arthur, well, I appreciate you coming in and sharing what you shared. Have a good rest of your day. I always appreciate you coming in, man. Yeah, last week, as I said earlier, that one, it was basically like a TED Talk. I actually structured it because the first 2 weeks I didn't really structure anything. I just kind of was like, all right, we'll just wing it. I have a topic to talk about, and we'll talk about it, and I'll do research. But I didn't actually have like, here's my outline, here's my discussion, here's my talking points. But last week I did. So it was a lot more concise, a lot less roundabout, tangent oriented. There was still some tangents, there was still some anecdotes, but it was a lot more actually structured, of like, we're breaking it down. What is this? How do you experience it? What are some good ways to go about it, and blah blah blah. So I think I'll do that on motivation next week. Like I said, I was gonna do it today, but thankfully and luckily you guys were here, so we were able to have more of a banter, have more chit chat back and forth. But next week, if that's not there, because of course the banter and the back and forth is the goal of this, so if that's there, that circumvents all other plans. But next week will be talks about motivation in lieu of that. But yeah, if no one has anything else they wanted to discuss right now, then I might wrap up a little bit early. But I'm going to leave it open. I'll give it 2 minutes of just peaceful silence of this song. I don't think it's considered a song. I don't know, this track. Give people 2 minutes to kind of think about something if they want to talk about it, and if not, then in about a minute and 45 seconds I'll just wrap it up. We'll end the stream. I'll upload this on YouTube, so if you missed any of it, you can watch it from the beginning. And I'll give my little closing statement that I still need to probably professionally type out, so I have a consistent intro and exit. But yeah, I mean, to fill up time for that next minute and 10 seconds, I'm just gonna thank everybody who did come in. I really do appreciate you guys. I'm just trying to become a better person. I'm trying to help anybody else be a better person, not through necessarily my example as in I am a better person, just through discussion, through talks, voicing things. Well, thank you, Burnaby. I appreciate that. Voicing things out loud or writing them on paper. Again, a lot of research has gone into the effects and the efficacy of writing something down, or at least vocalizing something, opposed to thinking just mentally about something. The power of that is so strong. And whether you believe in manifestation or whatever, there's science, there's research. It checks out. It's important to express in whatever way you can outside of internally. So me doing this, I'm open for criticism. I'm open for, if I have misinformation, please correct me. But if you do, make sure you have a source to back your correction. Not that I would distrust you, just that I would like to research it myself and look at the source and educate myself. So it's about educating myself and helping others, helping myself, and we can all grow. Again, as I said earlier, with collectivism, a rising tide floats all boats. So yeah, that does conclude it for me then, since it seems there's nobody has anything today to talk about beyond what we've already discussed. So thanks again for everybody who came in. Thank you for whoever happens to watch this on the YouTube. I appreciate every one of you guys. You're pessimists. I believe rising tide hides the rocks. Well, if the tide gets high enough, then the rocks are irrelevant, right? You know? You can't hit the rock if the rock's the bottom 10 feet and the water's 30 feet up. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back with this segment next week. I might change the time. I might not, because they do the lawn, and it seems to only last about 15 minutes, but it seems to be pretty regular. This is their time that they do yard work around this apartment complex. So we'll see. We'll see. But as of now, 1 p.m., 3 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be back on Therapeutic Thursday next week. My topic of conversation, without any other conversation, will be motivation. What lack of motivation looks like, what is motivation, how to kind of develop motivation. And I'll look into some protocols that obviously aren't my protocols. I can't recommend any legally. But I'll do my research on some protocols that have been proven to help other people. And we'll take it from there. But as a disclaimer, again, this is just more of a safe space. This is a Therapeutic Thursday, not a Therapy Thursday. I am not licensed. I am not a professional yet. I will be, but I'm not yet. I'm just a student and always will be. So take everything I say with your own grain of salt. Do your own research. If you are in a dire strait, if you are feeling really, really down or have suicidal ideations or anything like that, don't be afraid to reach out for professional help. This kind of segment or this kind of thing is in theory a band-aid or just a healing ointment. It is not the cure. It is, well, hopefully it can be, but it's not the cure. Please seek professional help if you have serious dark thoughts. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I will be back on for this segment next week, 1 to 3. And I really need to write this down so I don't end on this awkward note. Adios, you guys. Thank you.